The timber shifted before anyone shouted. Clara Reed was crouched beneath the unfinished truss when the lifting line snapped sideways and dropped the beam 6 inches. The whole frame groaned above the river. Wade Mercer jumped from the stone abutment, caught her arm, and hauled her onto solid ground. "Back," Clara shouted. The crew froze. She pulled free of Wade, snatched up her carpenter's square, and pointed toward the hanging joint. "Lower it." One of the men stared at her. "We just got it up." "And you'll put it down." Contractor Amos Bell pushed through the workers. "What now?" Clara pressed the square against the joint. This shoulder was cut too shallow. Bell squinted. "It'll hold." No. Cold wind moved through the Colorado Gorge, carrying the smell of wet pine. Bell folded his arms. "We've already lost 3 days. You'll lose the bridge if you pin that joint." Several workers looked toward Wade. Clara held out the square. "Anyone who doubts me can check it." Wade took it and laid it against the cut. A thin gap showed along the edge. "She's right." Bell's face hardened. "You brought her here to estimate timber." "I brought her because she knows timber. That isn't the same as running a bridge crew." Clara wiped grit from her palm. "I didn't ask to run your crew. I asked you not to raise bad work over men's heads." Bell kicked a wooden pin into the dirt. "I'm finished." Wade stared at him. "You're walking off? I won't put my name under a woman who thinks a carpenter's square makes her a bridge builder." Clara picked up the pin and turned it in her fingers. "You shouldn't put your name under this either. It's split." Bell walked toward the road. 2 men followed him. The others stayed. Mesa Crossing had washed out in spring. Ranchers had spent months using a rough upstream ford that would become useless when winter water rose. 12 working days remained. Clara knew because she had counted them before breakfast. Wade removed his gloves 1 finger at a time. "Can you finish it?" She looked at the unfinished span. "The bridge?" "Yes. You just lost your contractor. I noticed. By supper, you may lose more men." "So?" Clara tucked the square into her belt. "Don't ask, because you want courage from me. Ask if you intend to live with the answer." His eyes stayed on hers. "Can you finish it?" Clara walked to the timber table and unrolled the drawings. For 7 years she had checked other men's measurements and watched them sign their names beneath her work. 12 days if deliveries hold. "Then, take the job." Clara looked up. "The committee won't approve me." "They approved Bell. That does not improve their judgment." A corner of Wade's mouth moved. "Give them better judgment." Clara rolled the drawings closed. "If I take responsibility, I take authority. You'll have it. No committee member changing cuts after supper. No rancher ordering men around once they're on this site. No one telling me dangerous work is good enough because a wagon is waiting." Wade nodded. "And my wages match the job." "Yes, and when something goes wrong, you don't stand in front of me and explain it away. I stand beside you." "That wasn't what I said." "I know." Clara looked toward the river. "Get the committee." By mid-afternoon, 5 committee members stood beside the rejected joint. Clara showed them the bad cut, the split pin, and the corrected measurements. One turned toward Wade. "Are you certain?" Wade pointed at Clara. "Ask the person building your bridge." By sunset, Clara Reed was forewoman of Mesa Crossing. She reorganized Bell's abandoned work. Good timber went north of the sawhorses. Questionable stock went beside the tool shed. Every approved cut received a short red mark from the carpenter's pencil behind her ear. Ezra Talley, the sawmill foreman, watched her. Finally, he said, "Red mark means approved?" "Yes. And no mark? Don't use it." Ezra grunted. It was not praise. It was enough. Near dusk, Clara started down toward the lower staging. Wade stepped into her path. You're not going under there again today. Move. You were nearly crushed this morning. And now I know why. You can inspect it from above. No. She pointed toward the staging. You hired me to decide what is safe. If you don't trust me to stand where I need to stand, replace me now. For several seconds, only the river answered. Then Wade stepped aside. Take a rope. That I'll do. He handed it to her. No argument. Later, one of Wade's ranch hands reached for a timber before Clara gave the signal. Wade stopped him. She gives the order here. The man glanced at Wade, then waited. Clara marked the timber red. She said nothing, but her hand stayed on the pencil a moment longer. Before dark, a polished wagon rolled down the road. Gideon Rusk climbed out wearing a black coat and silver watch chain. He owned the toll road through the southern ridge. I hear Bell quit. Clara kept writing measurements. You heard quickly. I make my living from roads. Rusk checked his watch. I also bought the remaining forged bridge straps in Pine Junction this morning. Clara stopped writing. Wade's face went still. All of them? He asked. Everything available this side of Denver. Rusk looked toward the incomplete span. If this bridge is not open when the ford closes, the committee can still sign my seasonal freight contract. Guaranteed passage. No construction risk. At your toll, Clara said. At a fair toll. He tipped his hat. 12 days, Miss Reed. Then, he returned to his wagon. Darkness settled into the gorge after he left. The crew went home. Clara stayed beneath the first completed section with her notebook and red pencil. Wade came beside her. Still think 12 days? Clara looked across the empty space where the central span had to go. Other people had spent years signing their names over work she had measured. This time, there was no one to hide behind. She placed the pencil against the pale timber and drew one clean red line. We have 12, she said. So we use 12. By sunrise, Clara had changed the whole worksite. Bell had tried to build 3 sections at once. Clara stopped that. She divided the remaining men into 2 crews. Ezra Talley ran the saws. Wade's ranch hands carried and fitted timber. Nobody touched a piece until Clara had checked the cut and marked it red. The first argument came before breakfast. A broad-shouldered carpenter named Jeb Carver dropped his mallet on the bench. I've built barns since before she was old enough to carry that pencil. Clara kept measuring. Then you should know 6 inches is still 6 inches no matter who reads the rule. A few men looked away to hide smiles. Jeb did not. You plan on measuring every nail too? No. She marked the timber. Only the things that can kill somebody. Ezra coughed into his sleeve. That ended it. By noon, the bridge had gained 12 feet. Then a wagon came down from Pine Junction. The driver carried no iron. Clara walked beside him as he climbed down. Where are the straps? Bought out. By Rusk? The driver rubbed his beard. Not just the straps. Bolts, too. Half the heavy spikes. Wade heard from the far side of the workbench. How much did he offer? Enough that the supplier didn't ask questions. Clara looked toward the piles of timber. Gideon Rusk did not need to break the law. He only needed the calendar. That afternoon, 2 more workers left. Rusk had offered them higher wages to grade his southern road. Jeb Carver was one. He collected his tools without looking at Clara. Nothing personal. Clara tied a new line around a timber stack. Work usually is. He hesitated. Then he walked away. Wade watched him go. I can bring more ranch hands. Can they cut joints? No, then they carry. You're short 3 trained men. I know, we could pay more. With what? Wade did not answer. Clara turned back to the bridge. Rusk wants us spending money faster than we spend timber. What do you want to do? Stop pretending we still have Bell's crew. She pulled the work schedule from beneath a stone. We finish 1 section before touching the next. No wasted movement. No man waiting for another man to catch up. Wade studied her new marks. You already changed the schedule. 20 minutes ago. He looked at her. You ever ask permission? Only when somebody else is responsible for the answer. For the next 2 days, Mesa Crossing became a machine built from tired people. Wade worked his ranch before daylight, then rode straight to the gorge. He hauled timber. He turned the drilling brace. When Clara told him to hold a beam steady, he held it. He never used his committee seat to change an order. That mattered more to her than she allowed herself to examine. On the third evening, Clara found him sitting on an overturned timber block, rubbing his shoulder. You're lifting wrong. I own cattle. That doesn't make your back special. She showed him how to shift the load closer to his body. Wade followed her instructions. You enjoy ordering me around. No. You answered too fast. I enjoy not having to explain the same thing twice. He smiled. Clara looked away first. The river ran darker below them. Wade picked up his gloves. You know what this bridge means to the valley? Freight. More than that. She waited. My ranch can survive one bad winter route. Smaller farms can't. The toll road would eat half their margin before spring. Clara looked toward the central span. So this isn't about your cattle. Not only. He pulled one glove on. You're protecting more people than you know. Save the gratitude. I wasn't thanking you. What were you doing? Trying to understand what happens after the bridge is finished. Her pencil stopped over the notebook. There will be another job somewhere. I meant for you. That is what I meant. Wade's second glove stayed in his hand. Always another town? Usually another crew? If they'll hire me. And when they don't need you anymore? Clara shut the notebook. Then I leave before they have to say so. She walked toward the tool shed before he could answer. The next morning, Ezra called her from the eastern wall of the gorge. You ought to see this. Clara climbed down beside him. Old branches were wedged between two rocks almost 8 feet above the normal river. She touched the gray wood. Recent? Ezra shook his head. Been there years. Clara looked higher. A dark line crossed the stone. Mud stain. Not one flood. Several. She climbed along the bank, checking each mark. The inherited bridge drawings sat folded inside her coat. Her steps slowed. The center span in Bell's plan hung too low. Not by inches, by feet. Wade came down behind her. What is it? Clara opened the drawings across a flat rock. She measured from the waterline to the old scars. Then again, her mouth went dry. This bridge will stand in ordinary water. Wade crouched beside her. And in a flood, she tapped the bottom of the drawn truss. The river hits here. Ezra looked from the plans to the scarred rock. Hits underneath. Yes, and lifts. Yes, Wade stared at the unfinished structure above them. How much has to change? Clara already knew. She wished she did not. The central span. How much of it? Most. Ezra removed his cap. We've spent 2 days on that. Clara folded the plan. I know. That afternoon, the committee arrived for inspection. Gideon Rusk came with them. Clara showed everyone the flood marks. One committee member shook his head. That bridge plan was approved months ago. By men who never came down here after spring runoff. We have 5 days. I know. Rusk checked his watch. And your answer is to dismantle finished work? Clara looked at the span. Men had worked until their shoulders failed to straighten. Wade's cattle shipment depended on this crossing. The whole valley was watching. She could finish Bell's bridge. It would probably stand through winter. Probably. Clara took the red pencil from behind her ear. She climbed to the first central support and drew a new line well above the existing joint. Take it down. Nobody moved. Ezra looked at her. All of it? Everything below this mark. The first hammer blow sounded a few seconds later. Then, another. By sunset, 2 days of finished work lay in pieces along the riverbank. Rusk watched from the road before finally leaving. The committee left soon after him. Ezra stood beside Clara as the last beam came down. You know what tomorrow is? Yes, 5 days. Yes, he looked at the dismantled central span lying beside the river. We're farther from done than we were this morning. Clara stared at the red line on the surviving timber. For once, she had no answer. 5 days remained. And the heart of Mesa Crossing was lying on the ground again. Clara did not sleep. She spent the night at the tool table with the bridge drawings pinned beneath stones, changing angles by lantern light while the river moved black below the gorge. At midnight, Ezra brought her coffee. At 2, he brought another. By 4, he stopped asking whether she wanted any. Clara kept only what could still be used. The side approaches remained sound. The upper braces stayed. The central span had to rise higher, but she refused to throw away good work simply because the original plan had failed. When the eastern sky finally turned gray, she had a new sequence. Ezra leaned over it. You shortened the lower cord and raised the center. That changes the load. Yes, he followed the pencil lines. You'll need heavier blocking here. We have it. And another pair of iron straps. We don't. Ezra looked at her. Clara tapped the drawing. So we change how the joint locks. He studied the page again. Then he nodded once. Could work. It was the closest thing to praise he had given her. By sunrise, every remaining worker was back at the site. Clara gathered them beside the dismantled beams. We lost 2 days yesterday. Nobody argued. We do not get them back by rushing. She pointed toward the red-marked timbers. We use what we have. We change the center. We raise the span. If anyone cuts before checking the mark, we lose time. If anyone guesses, we lose more. Wade stood among the ranch hands instead of beside the committee table. That was deliberate. Clara noticed. They worked until noon without stopping. Then Gideon Rusk arrived alone. He did not come down to the bridge. He waited beside Wade's horse. Wade saw him and climbed the path. Clara kept working. She could not hear the first part of their conversation. Then, Rusk raised his voice just enough. You don't owe her your ranch. Wade's shoulders changed. Clara looked up. Rusk continued. Sign the freight agreement today. I'll cut your toll rate in half for the winter. Your cattle move on schedule. Your ranch takes no loss. This bridge becomes the committee's problem. Wade removed his gloves 1 finger at a time. Clara knew that habit now. He only did it when he wanted several seconds before answering. My men stay here. Rusk glanced toward the unfinished span. You're risking a shipment worth more than this bridge. I know. For her? Wade folded his gloves. For the crossing. Rusk smiled without warmth. Tell yourself that. Wade stepped closer. I don't need your permission to know why I make a choice. Rusk checked his watch. 4 days after today, Mercer, when the deadline passes, my offer disappears. It can disappear now. Rusk mounted his wagon and left. Clara waited until Wade returned. Then she handed Ezra the measuring rod. Take over. Wade followed her behind the stacked timber. You heard. Yes, Clara, you delayed your cattle? A portion of them. So your ranch hands can stay here. Yes, her pencil snapped between her fingers. Wade looked down at the broken pieces. That was your last red one. I have another. That isn't what I meant. She lowered her voice. You should have taken the deal. No, if this bridge misses the deadline, your shipment loses days. I know. You are not responsible for proving I can finish this. I know that too. Then why are you doing it? He looked at her for several seconds. Because I believe the bridge needs finishing. That isn't all. No, Clara looked away. The saws started again behind them. Wade spoke more quietly. You keep turning every decent thing someone does into a debt you have to repay. Her head came back toward him. I do not. You do. That is an easy thing for a man with land to say. His expression tightened, but his voice stayed level. I offered my men because they were mine to offer. I delayed my cattle because they were mine to delay. He took the broken pencil from her hand. You don't get to carry my choices for me. Clara said nothing. He held the 2 red pieces out. I am not helping because I expect something from you. She took them. Wade walked back toward the bridge. For the first time, she could not make his actions fit inside the narrow space she understood. By evening, the redesigned lower frame was complete. The next morning brought worse news. The freight wagon from Pine Junction arrived empty again. No iron, the driver said. Clara closed her eyes for 1 second. Nothing? Rusk bought the last shipment heading west. Ezra swore under his breath. One of the workers threw his cap into the dirt. Wade looked toward Clara. She did not answer immediately. Then she walked to the pile of remaining fittings. 12 straps. 9 heavy bolts. More spikes than they needed. Not enough for Bell's design. But Bell's design was gone. She crouched beside the new joint drawing. Ezra. He came over. What if we stop asking the iron to hold the whole connection? He looked at the timber. You want the wood carrying more. I want the geometry carrying more. He knelt beside her. For 20 minutes, they said almost nothing. Clara shifted 1 block. Ezra moved another. She drew a new angle in the dirt. He erased half of it with his boot. Then she drew it again. Better. Finally Ezra stood. Mark it. Clara reached behind her ear. Empty, the spare pencil lay on the workbench. Ezra walked over, picked it up, and returned. For weeks he had questioned every order. Now he held the pencil out to her. Clara took it. She measured the timber twice. Then she made the red line. Ezra picked up the saw. Everybody wait for the mark, he shouted. Nobody complained. By the 3rd day, red lines covered the new truss. Clara no longer had to explain what they meant. Men waited. They checked. They cut. Late that afternoon, Wade found Clara tightening a rope around a brace. You should eat. So should you. I did. You swallowed half a biscuit while walking. That counts. It does not. He smiled. She almost did too. Then he looked across the worksite. When I pulled you up that first morning, I thought you needed protecting. Clara tied the knot. And now? Now I think most of us would still be standing around arguing with Bell if you hadn't been here. She looked at him. Wade continued. You're the one holding this place together. Clara wanted to answer. Something honest reached the back of her throat. Then Ezra shouted from the far side. Clara, need your mark. She turned toward the call. The moment passed. At dawn on the final day, wagon wheels sounded above the gorge. The freight committee arrived first. Behind them came Gideon Rusk. He stepped down carrying a leather folder, his toll road contract. Rusk checked his silver watch. Sundown, he said. Clara looked toward the unfinished central truss. The last span still lay on the ground. By sunset, it had to be standing. And tested. Clara checked the time by the sun, not Rusk's watch. The central truss still lay beside the river. Every rope had been inspected twice. Every joint carried her red mark. Wade's ranch hands stood ready at the lifting lines, while Ezra waited near the final locking blocks. Clara climbed onto the stone abutment. Listen once. The worksite went quiet. We raise evenly. Nobody pulls ahead because his side looks slow. Ezra calls the left. I call the right. Wade watches the center line. Wade nodded. And if anything shifts, we lower it. One committee member frowned. Even if that costs the deadline? Clara looked at him. Especially then. Gideon Rusk stood beside the road with his leather folder tucked beneath one arm. He said nothing. Clara raised her hand. "Take the strain." Ropes tightened. The truss lifted from the ground. Timber creaked under its own weight. Left, 2 inches. Ezra repeated the order. Men pulled. Hold, the truss stopped. Clara leaned over the abutment and checked the alignment. Right side forward. Wade shifted his position beneath the center guide rope. "Easy," he called. The span rose another foot. Then the center tilted. "Stop." Every man froze. One rope had slipped deeper into its timber groove. Not broken, not failed. Moved. Wade looked up. "I can reset it. Not under load. We lower?" "Yes," a committee member muttered something behind Clara. She ignored him. The men lowered the span back toward its blocks. They had lost nearly half an hour. Rusk finally opened his watch. Clara saw him do it. She turned away. Wade came beside her while Ezra reset the rope. "You knew something like this could happen. I knew something could. You're not surprised. I don't have time to be." He almost smiled. "That sounds like you." Clara looked at the sun. "Ask me again after it stands." The second lift began cleaner. The central span climbed above the river one slow foot at a time. Clara called adjustments. Ezra answered from the opposite side. The crew moved together. No one rushed. No one guessed. By mid-afternoon, the first end reached its seat. Hold. Clara climbed down to check the joint. The red marks met. Exactly. She looked across the bridge. Bring the other side in. The last 6 inches took longer than the first 6 feet. A wooden block refused to settle. Ezra studied it. Angles wrong. Clara crouched beside him. No, seats carrying dirt. He scraped beneath it with a narrow chisel. A thin line of grit dropped away. They tried again. The block moved. Wade stood at the center rope, sweat darkening his shirt despite the cold wind. Clara raised her hand. Now, Ezra swung the mallet. One heavy strike. Then, another. The locking block seated flush against Clara's red line. For several seconds, nobody moved. Clara put her palm against the timber. The central truss stood above the river. Ezra stepped back. Bridge is standing. Clara shook her head. Bridge is standing when the test says it is. Rusk closed his watch. The committee gathered near the approach while Clara prepared the load wagon. It carried stone sacks and iron scrap, enough weight to exceed an ordinary freight crossing without abusing the new structure. Wade came to her. "You want me driving?" "No, why?" "You'll watch the center." "Who drives?" Clara looked toward Ezra. He grunted. "I figured she'd make me do something unpleasant eventually." He climbed onto the wagon. Clara checked the span one last time. She measured 3 marked points beneath the central cord and wrote each figure in her notebook. Then she stepped back. "Bring it across." The wagon rolled onto Mesa Crossing. Wood spoke under the wheels, not cracking, taking weight. Clara watched the center mark. Wade watched her. Halfway across, Ezra stopped. Clara measured again, a small movement. Expected. She wrote it down. Keep going. The wagon moved. One axle crossed the center, then the second. The truss held. Ezra reached the far side. Nobody cheered yet. Clara walked beneath the span and measured the 3 points again. She stared at the final number. Wade came closer. "Well?" Clara shut the notebook. It returned. Ezra leaned over the wagon seat. To where? Where it started. That was when the worksite broke open. Men shouted. Someone slapped Wade across the shoulder. 2 committee members shook Clara's hand at the same time. The first waiting freight wagon rolled forward almost immediately. Its driver removed his hat as he passed Clara. By the time the sun touched the ridge, 3 wagons had crossed Mesa Crossing. Rusk stood beside his wagon with the unsigned contract still inside the leather folder. The committee chairman approached him. "We won't need the seasonal agreement." Rusk looked toward Clara. "I assumed not." He climbed onto his wagon, then stopped. "Miss Reed." Clara waited. "I thought you'd missed the deadline. So did I yesterday." For the first time, he gave a brief laugh. That may be the only sensible thing either of us has said all week. He glanced at the bridge. "You built it higher than Belle's plan." "Yes, good decision." Then he drove away. The celebration followed the freight wagons into town. Clara stayed behind. Temporary chalk numbers still covered 2 braces. Loose tools remained beside the eastern abutment. Work finished properly. That was what she understood. The rest could wait. The gorge became quiet as evening settled over the river. Clara climbed onto the final brace and rubbed away the last chalk mark with her sleeve. Below her, boots crossed the new bridge. She looked down. "Wade, I thought everyone went to town." "They did. You didn't." No, Clara climbed toward the edge. He reached up. For a second, she remembered the first morning. Loose timber. A failed line. His hand closing around her arm and pulling her out of danger. Now there was no danger. Still, Wade placed both hands around her waist and lifted her down from the brace. Her boots touched the bridge deck. He did not step away. "The job is finished," Clara said. "I noticed. You don't need me anymore." Wade's face changed. Not shock. Recognition, as though he had finally heard the sentence beneath all the others she had spoken since coming to Mesa Crossing. He took off his gloves slowly. "I never wanted you because I needed a bridge." Clara looked toward the red marks on the central beam. "You hired me because you did. I hired a carpenter because I needed a bridge." He moved closer. "I stayed because of you." Her fingers tightened around the red pencil. Wade looked at it. "I don't want another contract from you." He touched her hand. "I don't want another 12 days. Clara lifted her eyes. "What do you want?" The river moved beneath them. After the bridge. After winter. After there's nothing broken for either of us to fix. His thumb rested against her hand. "I want ordinary mornings with you. Bad suppers. Long rides. Arguments about things neither of us will admit we're wrong about." Clara gave a small laugh. Wade's mouth softened. "Clara Reed, stay beside me." She swallowed. "For how long?" He looked directly at her. "Forever, if you'll choose it." Clara looked once more across Mesa Crossing. The bridge stood because she had trusted her own judgment when finishing the easier version would have protected her reputation. Now, Wade stood before her asking for something her work could not earn for her. She placed the red pencil in his palm. Then she closed his fingers around it. Yes, Wade lifted her again. Only an inch this time, enough to make her laugh against his shoulder before he set her back on the bridge. Behind them, the last freight wagon disappeared around the canyon bend. Their 2 shadows stretched across the completed span, crossing every red mark Clara had made. If Clara and Wade's journey across Mesa Crossing stayed with you, subscribe and like for more frontier stories of courage and earned trust.